If you have livestock on your property, it's important to manage their grazing, and that goes with the number of cows as well as how much you rotate or rest certain parts of your property. For that, you maintain cover, food, and space for wildlife at different times of the year.
When we talk about wildlife, wildlife like diversity, whether that's forbs, grasses, shrubs, whatever, that's the most important thing. So being able to move those livestock around and work in conjunction with the wildlife to make that diversity, everybody benefits. Rotational grazing replicates what the bison used to do a couple hundred years ago out here.
Bison would come through once a year and graze pretty heavily and then not come back for a long period of time, and a lot of our plants and vegetation adapted and evolved with that grazing aspect.
Prescribed burning is the act of burning off an area under controlled conditions. So everybody knows what wildfires are. Nobody likes wildfires. But prescribed burning is taking that old decadent vegetation down, letting the new green growth, the new forbs come up, the new flowers, creates that diversity that we talk about, and that's highly desirable for wildlife and for livestock.
In a perfect burn example or scenario, let's say you had a square-shaped burn unit with a north wind that day, so you would start in that south side of the burn. You would light a test fire and essentially anchor the fire into that southernmost point. Allow the fire to burn into the wind, that's a backfire. And once you achieve 20 to 40 feet of black burning into it, you would turn the corners on the east and west side. That becomes the flank fire. So as you move north with those flank fires, you also allow that fire to back in 20, 40 or more feet. And once you have that accomplished, you can turn that north side and light the head fire with the wind. So by achieving these different back, flank, and head fires in sequence, you're allowing that fire to consume itself within the middle of the burn unit to keep it safe and more close off the fire break.
By no means would we want you guys to just run out there and start lighting a fire. Please ask for assistance. Call your Parks and Wildlife local biologist, or maybe reach out to the local NRCS office, somebody or some professional that can help you get started. In conducting a prescribed burn, the first thing you need to do is call your local fire department, let your neighbors know. Generally, we recommend to let them know at least a week in advance, just in case if maybe they want to come help, or at least they would be aware of what's going to happen.
A prescribed burn plan is essentially a list of goals, objectives that you want to achieve by doing a particular burn, but also setting the timing and that weather window you're going to have to conduct that burn. It also has maps, emergency contacts, a contingency plan, as well as an emergency or a medical plan as well. So it covers all aspects of planning the burn, but also if something goes wrong during the burn, what to do and who to call. Range enhancement is reseeding or planting native grasses and forbs on your property for the benefit of wildlife, as well as resemble that historical vegetation community on your property.
When you want to reseed an area with a native seed, try to get it to grow from seed, from bare dirt, a lot of times there's competition. We have a lot of invasive grasses, Johnson grass, Bermuda grass, some of these things that are tough competitors. There may be a situation where you want to bring in some kind of chemical, a glyphosate or something to suppress or get rid of those exotic grasses and try to get that native seed the best chance of survival. Replanting, it's great, it's highly desirable, but there's a big cost to it. And that cost can range anywhere from $120 an acre to $150 and beyond. It depends on what seeds you're selecting, what your mix is, but that is one big downside.
For range enhancement, in general, the minimum is 10% of the total area designated in the plan, or 10 acres, whichever is smaller. So essentially, brush management is the planned use of mechanical or chemical means to set back woody vegetation on your property. But with that, ideally you're creating a mosaic of woody cover, so leaving motts or clumps of brush, but clearing some brush in a way to maintain that mix of woody versus open ground. So a lot of wildlife like edge. So by manipulating that and creating that mosaic, you're enhancing wildlife habitat across your place. That can be hand cutting. bulldozer, a skid steer with a mulcher.
This is our instant gratification tool.
Could be using chemical spray.
We have our aerial application for big, large-scale projects, but then if you have a smaller property or you're only trying to target a small amount of acreage, we do have a stump cut and spray option for a lot of our species. We also have a foliar spray that you can, just with a wand off the back of a ATV or something, you can spray the leaves and get chemical into the plants that way.
In brush management, there's a term called brush sculpting, which is basically kind of creating a natural mosaic of woody vegetation on your property, and essentially selectively taking out certain species or certain pockets of brush on your property. Whereas in some situations, some folks will do brush strips. They'll clear senderos or strips of woody vegetation, or doing a checkerboard type shape even as well.
The minimums for brush management are 10% of the designated area or 10 acres annually, whichever one's going to be less. And then for the Trans-Pecos area, 100 acres.
Riparian management and enhancement is to protect important habitat in riparian areas. That's generally the low areas on either side of creeks, rivers, and streams.
We can do a lot of things as far as riparian enhancement. Maybe we're trying to eliminate some invasive species out of it. Maybe that's going to be excluding cattle out of that area, planting some other streamside grasses that hold the soil really well to reduce that erosion and to stabilize the bank.
The minimum is one project implemented and maintained every 10 years to qualify. So that means essentially if you do a restoration or riparian management project, that covers you for 10 years. So as long as you maintain that and show that effort in the annual report, you're able to keep that practice for a 10-year period. Wetland enhancement is creating habitat for water-dependent species such as waterfowl. It includes restoration or creation of shallow water wetlands, green tree reservoirs, managed wetlands with levees and water control structures. There's a range of wetland types you could use under wetland management.
Up here in the Panhandle, generally that's applying to our playas, so trying to get some better native waterfowl food available, trying to reduce erosion going down into that playa, trying to create buffers around them. A lot of folks over the last century or so have dug pits right next to playas or in playas, trying to funnel that water into that pit for livestock, but it degrades the playa. So what we would recommend is to fill that pit back in, hopefully with the soil that was taken out of there, the good clay-based soil, so that that playa will become functional again and allow water to infiltrate back into the aquifer.
Constructing or maintaining a wetland can qualify as a practice for up to 10 years. But if you were to buy a property or inherit a property with an existing wetland, you could not use that as a practice for that 10-year period. You would have to create a new one or rebuild that existing wetland.
We also have habitat control for species of concern. Any habitat management activity that benefits endangered, threatened, or rare species can qualify. Such animals like the Texas horned lizards, golden cheek warbler, black-capped vireos, the Houston toad.
So some examples of habitat control for species of concern as far as practices go might be fencing off certain areas of quality habitat for those wildlife species. So it could be prescribed fire again, it could be brush control, it could be grazing management in certain places too. But those must follow existing plans for those unique species.
And then it does require a minimum of one project to be implemented every 10 years to qualify.
For prescribed control of native, exotic, and feral species, it usually includes legal means to control the number of grazing or browsing animals, but also maintaining population density of native wildlife, for example, white-tailed deer. A lot of folks get this particular practice confused with controlling feral hogs or spraying exotic vegetation, which is totally usable, but in general, this is more so along the lines of wildlife that have a direct impact on vegetation use, overbrowsing, overpopulation, etc.
Invasive plant species can cause a big issue. KR bluestem, very widespread all over the state. Some of the native plant species would be juniper or mesquite. Although it's native and we like native plants, they can become an issue in some areas.
The minimum to qualify is 10% of designated area or 10 acres annually, whichever is less. Wildlife restoration is the reintroduction and population management of Texas Parks and Wildlife Department approved native species within the carrying capacity of the habitat. Examples would be wild turkeys in parts of East Texas. So usually this particular practice involves working with Texas Parks and Wildlife to restore a wildlife species back to its original range.
If you're looking to restore a population for a particular species, it has to be a land or piece of area big enough to support a reproducing population of that particular species. Talking about scale, it depends on the animal you're talking about. The smaller the animal, the smaller the area. In regards to pronghorn, it takes a long time to get there. Pronghorn don't like brush, they like the open grassland flat. And for our project, we require a minimum of 10,000 acres.
For wildlife restoration, generally it includes landowners that utilize most of the habitat control practices. So properties that are in shape and have really good quality habitat for those particular wildlife species you're trying to restore. The best people to reach out to for help with a wildlife management plan is your local private lands biologist with Texas Parks and Wildlife Department.